One of the most exciting things with Season 1 arriving in Marvel Rivals is the first wave of balance changes for the roster. Both buffs and nerfs are soon to be here, and we do have the details on who exactly is getting stronger and who's been toned down a little bit. So let's jump in. Starting off with the Vanguards, Captain America is getting quite a much needed buff. His base health has been increased by 25 from 650 to 675. Liberty Rush's cooldown has been reduced from 12 seconds to 10 seconds. His movement speed while sprinting while using his Freedom Charge ult has increased. However, the additional health that he gains from activating his ult per second is going from 110 to 100. Venom receives a pretty nice buff. For Symbiotic Resilience, the bonus health that's gained per 1 point of lost health is increased from 1 point of health to 1.2. And the base damage of his ultimate has now increased from 40 to 50. Some pretty nice changes, especially the damage increase to his ult, as his ult for Season 0 has been pretty useless. Thor also gets some small buffs here as well, increasing his base health from 500 to 525, and looking at his ultimate, he is now immune to any control effects in the ways of stuns, so he can no longer be interrupted. Looking at nerfs for Vanguards, the value of Hulk's Gamma Shield has been reduced from 250 to 200. To be honest, this is a bit of a strange change. This is Hulk's only defensive ability he's got, and I actually think that Gamma Shield is kind of weak, so to see it receiving a nerf is quite interesting. Doctor Strange is also receiving a nerf. The recovery value of his shield is being reduced from 80 points a second to 70. This does make sense. I feel like his shield does recover pretty quickly, and there is now damage fall off applied to his Maelstrom ability. The damage fall off will now begin at 5 meters. Switching over to Strategists, Cloak and Dagger have received the biggest buff here. The cooldown for Dagger Storm has been reduced from 15 seconds to 12 seconds, so this means more healing bubbles. Also, a big buff to her ult. Now instead of 3 dashes for Eternal Bond, there is 4. This means that you can apply 4 stacks so long as you dash in the same direction for all 4 dashes of Eternal Bond's both damage and healing effect on the ground. And bless this upgrade, the animation of switching between Cloak and Dagger, the time to do that has also been reduced, so this is a lot quicker. This means that the reload tech that is used, rather than reloading, you can simply just switch the Cloak and then switch back to Dagger so that you can automatically reload, will be a lot more efficient. This absolutely makes Cloak and Dagger much stronger. The next buff here is for Rocket. His healing is going from 60 points a second to 70 points. Much needed, as Rocket is definitely down the lower end of the healing spectrum. Jeff is receiving both a buff and a nerf. Interesting to see a buff, because the buff here is increasing his primary healing Joyful Splash from 140 a second to 150. I think Jeff already is pretty efficient in regards to healing, so it's interesting to see that his primary healing function is being buffed a bit. His ult is being adjusted. We already knew this was going to happen, and we got the details here, from a 10 meter sphere to a 10 meter radius with a 5 meter high cylindrical spell field. So it's a little bit confusing to understand exactly what this is with the mention of the actual area of effect for this. So it's hard to know how the area of this is going to be affected if it's still 10 meters. Is it 10 meters now long and not spherical? Like, what's going on here? But at least we know that looking at the height of the effect, that has absolutely been toned down. 5 meters. Let's hope anyway. Again, we won't know until we get to see it for ourselves, but there have been instances where people are like 15 meters above Jeff's ult, 20 meters even, and they still get swallowed. Mantis has received a bit of a nerf here. The movement speed increase that she gets from her passive, while she hasn't received any damage, has been reduced from 2.5 meters a second to 1.5 meters a second. So while the passive is active, she just will not be able to move as fast anymore, and that's quite a reduction there. This makes me big sad, as Mantis is absolutely my girl. This means that she's going to be a lot easier to hit now, which I know for some people they'll probably be jumping for joy over this. Looking at Luna Snow, she has also received a nerf. She can no longer spam toggle between the 2 different modes in her ult, going between both healing and damage boosting. There was actually a technique where you could essentially have both of these these effects activated at the same time by binding the switch mode key to that of your scroll wheel. And lastly, we have the Duelists. Looking at magic, she's increased a buff, so for her ult Darkchild form, Umbral Incursion's damage is going from 115 to 135. So try your best not to get uppercutted this season, as it's going to hurt. The spread on Punisher's assault rifle and shotgun has been slightly reduced, meaning that both of these weapons are going to be a little bit more accurate. The reduction in the shotgun spread makes me a little bit scared because the shotgun is incredibly strong and now it's going to be a little bit more accurate, especially like if you are incredibly close to Punisher, there's a good chance you're going to be wiped out by him this season. Scarlet Witch's changes lean more in the direction of a buff than a nerf. There are some people a little bit confused about this, so her primary attack, Chaos Control, the fixed damage has been increased from 50 to 60, but the percentage of DPS has been reduced from 5 to 3%. For those that don't know, the way that Scarlet Witch's primary attack damage is determined is by the total amount of health that the enemy has. So with the increase to the fixed damage, but the reduction of the percentage DPS, it kind of lifts her up a little bit. And we've also got an increase to the projectile damage of her secondary fire going from 30 to 35. There's also been a movement speed increase to both her ult and her shift. A lot of people are angry with Scarlet Witch's changes just because she's in a pretty good spot. I feel like her damage overall right now in Season 0 is fine for the most part. She can dish it out if she needs to. So this is absolutely going to make her a little bit more viable. Perhaps we might face some issues looking at Scarlet Witch in Season 1. Black Widow's got some good buff changes right here. The range of the first effect of Edge Dancer has been increased from 3 meters to 5 meters. So the follow-up effects that you get off of Edge Dancer, you've got more time to be able to activate that. A massive increase to her sprint effect, Fleet Foot. The time to recover the stamina bar of Sprint has gone from 12 seconds to full to 4 seconds to full. And her ult's received a pretty big upgrade here as well to reach the maximum power charge while using the ult. That's going from 1 second to 0.6, as she is pretty vulnerable and quite wide open while charging this up. Looking at Namor, he's received one pretty important buff right here, and that's more accurate throwing for the spawns. Summoning your spawns and trying to get like a good position for them or an accurate position is difficult, as there's a lot of awkward drop off when placing them, so now they can be more accurately placed. Squirrel Girl's ult has received a pretty massive upgrade here, so now instead of the Squirrel Storm randomly running all over the place, they will actually hone in on targets. But to balance this out, the health of the tsunami of squirrels has been reduced from 600 to 300, cut completely in half. This is a pretty fair reduction though, considering now the squirrels have a personal vendetta against people and will charge and hunt you down. Speaking about enhanced ults, Moon Knight is also receiving a similar change, so now the hands that come out of the hand of Khonshu ult are going from 10 to 14, and the explosion radius of each of these hands have been increased from 4 meters to 5 meters. This is fair enough. I've always thought that Moon Knight's ult is probably one of the worst overall when looking at the Duelist ult lineup. Unless of course you're trapped in a confined area, it's pretty useless, so it's going to be interesting to see how this improves it. Storm, probably the Duelist that is in need of a buff the absolute most. Projectile speed of her primary attack is going from 100 meters a second to 150 meters a second. This means that it's going to be a lot easier for Storm to hit targets, and the damage of this has been increased from 50 to 55. Her secondary attack, Bolt Rush, the damage of that is increasing from 70 to 80, as yes, it is pretty useless currently. And the bonus health that you get from using her ult, Omega Hurricane, will linger after the ult has finished. Now the health will drop off. It will drop off by a rate of 100 HP per second, but it doesn't just vanish instantly. This means that she has a bit of survivability when coming out of her ult, considering that the way you use Storm's ult is getting right into the middle of the group of the enemy team. With the health fall off, currently it means that you're absolutely vulnerable as soon as the ult is finished, unless of course you've wiped the entire enemy team. I do fear that Storm is going to be one of the stronger duelists with these upgrades come Season 1. Switching over to the nerfs, Hela's base health has been reduced from 275 to 250. Now this isn't mentioned in the official patch notes, but her head and body shots do less damage. This has been reported from Season 1 testers, so that is good, but it's not a huge nerf to her. I don't think her overall HP was kind of the issue, but at least now we know that we can take her down faster. But it seems like she's still going to be able to dish out some pretty insane damage. Is the reduction in the body and headshots, it's very slight from what I can tell, and probably hence why it's not mentioned in the patch notes. Is that going to be enough? We'll have to see. Hawkeye is the other infamous hero that people have been foaming at the mouth over to receive a nerf, and he does have a nerf here, reducing the triggering distance of his passive ability from 60 to 40 meters, and also the additional damage that you'll get when the passive is at 100% charge is going from 80 additional damage to 70. This is the thing that determines if you're going to get the one-shot headshot, but do know that he can still, as reported by Season 1 testers, he can still pop one-shots. So the changes here more so make him less of a sniper. He has to be closer to his target in order to activate the passive to ensure he's going to get that one-shot headshot, but it's still a viable thing, like he can still do it. So I can still imagine the complaints towards Hawkeye will exist going forward. The additional health that Black Panther receives after refreshing his Vibranium marks with the Spirit Rend ability is going from 40 to 30, and the limit of his additional health has been reduced from 120 to 75, so this is a reduction in his survivability. And as a strategist main, I say, hell yeah, let those Black Panther players suffer. Winter Soldier has received a middle ground change with the increase to the bonus health provided by both Bionic Hook and Tainted Voltage going from 30 to 40, so more bonus health for Winter Soldier. His primary fire is also receiving a slight upgrade going from 70 damage to 75. His base health is also being increased from 250 to 275. However, he is receiving a reduction in area damage. I'm assuming this is to do with his ult, going from 70 to 65, not huge to be fair, and there is reduced damage decay going from 65 at 40 meters to 60, so a slight little tweak to his ult. But overall, this is more so of a buff to Winter Soldier than anything. The Wolverine has sort of received a buff here. His base health has gone from 300 to 350, but his damage reduction ability, Undying Animal, the damage reduction ratio that's provided by this is going from 50% to 40%, so this is to help balance out the increase to his base health. Overall, though, this is a boost to his survivability, as this has been a problem. I'm happy it's just that, really, to be fair, because looking at his actual damage and him performing, if you've got the right player playing Wolverine, my god, does this guy rip up. I'm a little bit scared of this, to be fair. We'll see how it goes for Season 1. And Psylocke's ult will now check for barriers. This is considered to be a nerf, and I'm not fully understanding exactly what this means. I don't know if this means that now Psylocke simply will not attack heroes that have their barriers up and will rather just simply prioritize heroes without any barriers activated. If that is the case, I think the reason why people are considering this to be a nerf is that she just simply won't damage barriers, which, depending on the situation, could be a negative. So those are all of the changes across the roster for Season 1. Some pretty good changes. Some of them don't make sense, but that's just the nature of balance changes for any online competitive game, to be fair. I'm incredibly excited for the Cloak and Dagger changes, as well as the tank upgrades, though the Hulk one still doesn't really make too much sense to me. And yes, I'm absolutely still scared of both Hela and Hawkeye, along with Storm. Most likely also now Winter Soldier. I think he was already performing pretty well in Season 0, and I also think Wolverine is going to continue to be a problem. We've also got Scarlet Witch getting an upgrade too, and I'm like, oh my god, it's Stress City, man. But hey, overall, some pretty good changes. Sort of surprised that Star-Lord and Iron Man haven't received a nerf. That's honestly really surprising to me, but hey, you know, there's always hope for Season 2, baby. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Be sure to like this video if you enjoyed, subscribe to the channel to keep up with everything going on here. As always, a big thank you to my wonderful patrons. I hope you're all having a fantastic day, and we'll talk again real soon.